All right, let's kick it off. I hope you enjoyed that. If that doesn't get you excited about stop motion animation, I'm not sure what will. Straight ahead, if you're wondering who that person is in the picture right there, that is famous animator, stop motion animator Ray Harryhausen, and we will definitely be talking about him in this section. Straight ahead, stop motion animation is probably the oldest visual effects technique, and historically the most versatile means to produce creature and monster effects. This is Smaug. He is a dragon. Computer-generated imagery has largely replaced stop motion for creature work in movies. But studios like, for example, Leica Studios, still create this art form for love of the craft, love of the discipline, stylistic reasons. There's a lot of stop motion actually out there, and this is a shot still from Robot Chicken. Dolls and action figures and toys with movable joints or clay figures are often used in stop motion because of their already pre-built ease in repositioning. We will talk about how to create, of course, all this from scratch, but if you're interested in getting into stop motion, you just want to practice and play around a little bit, there's just ready-made action figures and toys and dolls out there that you can pose over time, and away you go. At the heart of the process, of course, a lone animator creates the performance straight through, often with little collaboration, and the vision of what's about to be achieved is basically solely in their head. Traditionally, stop motion animators don't have the luxury of pose-to-pose animation principle techniques, so a lot of planning must be made to ensure that the action has the correct timing for the duration of the shot. We're going to talk a little bit about what is pose-to-pose animation versus straight ahead. With zero keyframe interpolation, stop motion delivers an aesthetic look that is somewhat surreal take on realism. And when I say zero keyframe interpolation, I'm talking about the ability to edit Bezier points on traditional input graphs for animation. The stop motion animator actually has to do all that manually as far as easing in and timing effects on, so to speak, keyframes. But it delivers an aesthetic look that is a somewhat surreal take on realism, further abstracted by the lack of motion blur, but not always. This is not always the case, and we will talk a little bit about that coming up as well. Not all stop motion requires figures or models. Many stop motion films can involve using everyday objects, household appliances, or other things for comedic effect. Stop motion using objects is often referred to as object animation. Let's take a quick look back and see where all of this actually came from. The very first documented stop motion animated film is credited to J. Stewart Blackton and Albert E. Smith, the founders of Vitagraph Studios, for what was called the Humpty Dumpty Circus. And that was based on the antique toy of the same name, which was released way back in 1898. Vitagraph was one of the first and biggest motion picture studios in the silent era. They produced big hits like Smashing Barriers in 1919, The 90 and 9 and The Little Minister in 1922, and Black Beauty in 1925. I haven't seen any of these movies either, but I love the poster artwork, so I just wanted to show them to you. World War I killed off their foreign market, and Warner Brothers swallowed them up in 1925. But in the Humpty Dumpty Circus, they used their daughters' toys and dolls for props, since they were already fairly articulated. And unfortunately, moving footage doesn't exist anymore of this first attempt, and the animated Humpty Dumpty Circus has been lost to time. That's kind of sad. Maybe someday it'll appear in somebody's attic somewhere, and stop motion historians will enjoy once again the efforts and shown in the Humpty Dumpty Circus. But a huge milestone occurred. The big stop motion milestone occurred in 1933 with the release of the classic movie King Kong, of course. Directed by Marion Cooper and Ernest Shostak, both uncredited, and of course starring Fay Wray. You may recognize the name Fay Wray from a song in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It was a huge sensation. It was a huge hit. There were actually 2 main stop-motion Kongs built for the movie at 18 inches with aluminum armatures, foam rubber, latex, and rabbit fur. The original armature was actually auctioned off for over $200,000. Here's the armature of the original King Kong, one of 2. Of course, it doesn't have the rabbit fur on it anymore, and it's a little bit worse for wear, but what an incredible historical artifact. The original armature, like I said, was auctioned off for over $200,000 to Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson keeps popping up in our lectures, and with good reason. Peter Jackson is a huge and avid collector of movie props, costumes, cinema artifacts. His collection is immense. I mean, not just big. His collection is warehouse big. He has everything in here. Just scrolling through some of these shots from his collection, you could see little objects from tons of your favorite movies, historical and otherwise. Planet of the Apes we see back there. I mean, it's just a treasure chest of not just stop motion movie props, but all movie paraphernalia. These skeletons look like they belong to the famous Jason and the Argonauts. I believe that is Teddy. Maybe his name is Teddy, from AI, the talking bear that actually kind of served as like the Jiminy Cricket conscience. I'm not sure what robot that actually is. He looks pretty amazing. He kind of reminds me a little bit. He's got this retro kind of Iron Giant kind of a feel to him. I'd love to know where he came from. But as you can see, this collection is huge. There's something from Doctor Who, a couple of monster films, elements from the Alien movies, all properly sorted and tagged. And if you were looking for a costume for Halloween, boy, look no further than his collection and actually get the authentic screen scene wardrobe of whatever character you desire. Here's a clip of Peter Jackson talking about his King Kong acquisition and showing his love of where this King Kong armature actually came from, how he found it. Take a look.
Earlier this year, I visited my friend Peter Jackson in his cave, his world-class collection of props, costumes, and cinema artifacts that inspired him as a young filmmaker and continue to inspire him. One of Peter's favorite films, of course, is King Kong, and one of his most prized pieces in the collection is King Kong's armature, the metal articulated skeleton that Willis O'Brien used to animate King Kong to life for the 1933 film.
So Peter, this is a shelf that's totally goes to your core, does it?
It does.
Describe what we're looking at here.
Well, this is like a lot of stop motion things here. This is including a stop motion sculpture I started when I was about 14 years old and never actually finished it.
No way.
But that's something I was sculpting when I was some monsters I was trying to make when original monster anyway. So this is a stop motion shelf, but of all the stop motion things, this is the thing that I would cherish the most. If there was a classic, story of what would you save if there was a fire?
Right. Yes.
What
would you run out of this room
is
with?
the thing I would certainly grab. This is because this is the original King Kong. This is King Kong 1933, the original armature.
This is the.
Now there was only 2 of them made. The other one is actually with Bob Burns.
Yeah.
And he has the other King Kong armature. Now I've taken this to Bob's house and we photographed the 2 armatures together and looked at them. His one is a lot more neatly machined than mine, and so we surmise that this is Longface, which is the prototype, because they made one Kong. They did a test to sell it to the studio.
Oh, okay.
So they shot, Willis O'Brien shot some test footage, and what he shot was the stuff that's in the movie. He shot the Tyrannosaurus Rex fight,
right,
where Kong fights a T-Rex.
So his camera test made it in. Yeah,
because they were like stop motion, but they were done as tests to convince this RKO to finance this very expensive film. So he used Longface for the scene where he shakes the guys off the log, and a couple of others. And then when they did when the film got financed, they then made a second one, so another set of animators could work on it, and that's called round face. And the round face, which we think is the Bob Burns armature, is a lot well machined, because this is so we just thought, well, this makes sense if it's a prototype, if it's the one that they haven't even got their funding for the movie yet, so they're just kind of doing what they need to do to make it work. So
here's the thing that blows my mind about this, looking at it as almost a prototype of an entirely new art form.
Yes,
is I've worked on stop motion films, friends that worked on Nightmare Before Christmas.
Sure.
The stop motion armatures are still being made exactly this way.
Yeah.
With pressure plates against ball bearings with high sensitivity, so that the animators have the right amount of resistance. They can hold themselves up,
and they can tighten them if they need to. They can get a screwdriver or an Allen key, or in this case a screwdriver.
Threaded feet, so they can lock them into the. And so Willis O'Brien, in one fell swoop, invents a technology that no one's been able to improve upon, really.
No.
I mean, the machining in here, that is incredibly sensitive, beautiful work.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
It really is.
It's unbelievable. It's all getting a bit loose now, because what they would have done is had this incredibly tight. Because it's like with stop motion and something that weighs, because he weighs quite a lot.
This is 7
so
or 8 pounds.
you're screwing him to the baseboard by his feet, and so you're going to have these ankle joints and knee joints as tight as anything, so tight.
Right.
So if you're trying to animate him moving his leg, you're going to be pulling so hard to move it that one frame. It's just because you can't. These cannot be loose and tight. Otherwise, he's going to be top heavy. He'll go crashing to the ground.
And you can see it when he's climbing the building. You can see the fur flashing from the animator's handling.
Yeah. I mean, they could loosen them up a little bit as they got nearer the top, without the need to hold up weight. But it was these bottom joints here must have been phenomenally tight when they were animating. Poor guys.
And the head is cast aluminum.
Yeah.
Do you think this modeling is to help it hold on to whatever went over it, whatever
the holes?
Like when he covers it with the skin and fur.
Yeah. And you can see here where there was these little screws, because there would have been a wire which was his lip. So you can sort of see it snapped off at some point in the past. It would have had a little lip thing that they could have they bent by hand, a sort of wire that they could bend to make them snarl. Would have been across there.
And so there's
so when you look at Kong fighting the Tyrannosaurus, when you look at them shaking the guys off the log, this is the one that you're seeing.
That's an amazing bit of history. And I mean, you couldn't have imagined when you first saw that this would be.
Well, nobody knew that the two of them had survived. I mean, Bob Burns for years and years and years, because I've known Bob for 25 years, and I've always gone to his house. I've always held his King Kong, the amazing thing, and it was like, and then suddenly in London, this thing shows up about 7 or 8 years ago. And it shows up, and none of the sort of the fans anywhere around, the sort of the enthusiasts knew that the second one had survived. And no one knew that I don't even know where it came from.
Wow.